Okay. Morning. We're just about ready to start.
Good morning.
Okay. All right, we are on the air and we're also in person. So why don't we jump right in? We were talking about the laws of muktzah. So, but I have to remember that we're in two different places in this book. One on Shabbos and one on Tuesday. So, we're at the Tuesday spot now. Tuesday spot. I think we go slower on Tuesday than we do on Shabbos. There's more of a fun. We have a feisty audience.
Yeah.
So we talked about. Yeah, it's good. No fun to, the Rishiva used to talk about the Maharsha. He lived in, I think, in the 1600s in Poland. It's kind of at the beginning of the Eastern European era, 15 or 1600s, one of the earlier Achronim. He's like after Rashi and Tosos, like it's Gemara, Rashi, Tosos, Maharsha.
Oh.
And he's like this iconic early commentary on the Gemara. And he writes at a certain point, I think it's in Masechet Shabbos actually, interestingly, that he is not publishing his comments on this section because he wasn't at the yeshiva, he didn't have the students with him. So because he didn't teach it to the students, he wasn't going to write his commentary. So the yeshiva said, well, probably whatever it sounds like he had ideas, he just chose not to write them or publish them. They're probably good ideas and worth reading, even if he didn't have the students. That was become ideas from the school. We're learning more from our students. But apparently he felt that it wasn't, he wasn't willing to put it out there if it didn't have that refinement that you get from the Yeshiva said, what difference would it make if the students just had like heads of cabbage while he taught them? Obviously, the kind of students he was talking about were, had enough input on what he was going to say that he felt that it really affected the quality of the stuff. If he just sat there lecturing at them, that was the phrase, like heads of cabbage. I think it's a Yiddish phrase, couple of phrase. It's not. Plus, it means the more other people talk, the less time I have to talk.
Oh.
The rest of my voice. So anyway.
Sort of describe the theorem of the Rosh Hashiva that students would not challenge him, but would comment.
Challenge him, yes.
Challenge, yeah.
Yeah, they had to make it, when I was there, there were, in the later years, there was 60, 70 people. They had to divide them into two shifts, so you can only speak up on every other day, depending on which group you were in.
Oh.
I don't know how much people adhered to it, but that was the system. Okay, anyway, so we talked about the laws of muktzah. Okay, we talked about different ways of moving muktzah. So the two kinds, moving it with a part of your body other than your hands, contrasted to moving the object by means of some other intermediate thing like a table, a tray, something of that nature. We said that when you move an item with your foot, let's say, according to many people, that's permitted entirely with any kind of muktzah for any reason. But some people say that's not a license to move muktzah. Same thing as moving with your hands. When you move something indirectly, like tilt the table, knock it across the floor with a bat, whatever it is, that is permitted according to everybody, but only if it's not for the benefit or preservation of the muktzah item itself, but it's for some other permitted purpose. Those are the two branches of that subject. Yeah, there's two alternative ways of moving muktzah that can get around the restriction. One is we call piltul begufo, moving it with your body, so any part of the body other than your hand, so your knee, your teeth, your ears, whatever, and how acrobatic you are. So according to those that permit it, it's permitted for any purpose and under any circumstances, but there are those that don't permit it. The other way of moving muktzah indirectly is you use your hands, but you don't contact the muktzah directly. It's on the table, you tilt the table. If it's in a jacket, you turn the jacket upside down so it falls out of the pocket. If it's on the floor, you can hit it with a hockey stick, anything like that. So, in that case, those who permit it, they say it's permitted everybody agrees that it's permitted under some circumstances, but the circumstances would require that you're not doing this to preserve or protect the muktzah item, but it's for something other purpose.
To get it out of your way.
Right, get out of your way. Right, it's gonna maybe it's gonna hurt someone, or because you need the space, or anything that's not.
It's so hard not to rationalize that, though.
I don't know if rationalization comes into it. It's like if you had dual purpose, some things are forbidden for dual purpose. Like if you're speaking lashon hara because it's constructive, but you also don't like the person, that's the problem. But I don't know with muktzah, if you have a permitted reason that you're moving it, I don't know if it. I can't tell you this with certainty, but my assumption is you might also be happy that you're. It's not, certainly it's not your primary purpose. Let's say that while it's on the table, and the main issue is that you have to put the soup pot down, and you're holding a hot pot of soup, and in the back of your mind you think, well, it's also probably better if it's not on the table. But again, you primarily, I assume that's okay. I would assume you can research it further. But, okay, before you do it next time, check. But we don't never do this intentionally. We wouldn't be in the situation in the first place. Okay. I don't think we started different categories of muktzah. I don't know if we started that, but there are different categories. I think we started it, but let's look at it again. We're going to need 2 bookmarks of 2 different colors, so I can keep track of what's on Tuesday and what's on Shabbos. I didn't say your job. So listen, when we're raising all this money, we got to use it on something. So buying 2 bookmarks. Okay, so.
I feel bad that they don't put more ribbons.
More ribbons, right? I know. Well, we have 2, but they look the same, so it doesn't really. Okay. Anyways.
We really have 2?
Yeah. Muktzah. There's different kinds of muktzah. So. I guess it's called the least kind of muktzah is a hammer, a scissors, a screwdriver, a saw. Things like that. Those are less muktzah than a pencil. The most muktzah is a rock, a twig, a pebble. Muktzah means things that are not designated for use, not on your radar. It's like your packing list for Shabbos. And things that are raw materials, not formed into any usable object in any way, are completely muktzah because they have no use. So, debris, right? Here are the examples: rocks, stones, bricks, gravel, pebbles, sand, twigs, grass clippings, money, right? Belongs in the same category as rocks, sticks. Then Shabbos, we talk about Ein Olam Haba, right? It's like the world to come. It's a time of being, not the time of doing, the time of enjoying, rather than the time of working. And money and rocks are the same thing in Olam Haba, right? On Shabbos, money is just as useless as other examples of the kind of muktzah, trash, like nutshells, peach pits, construction material, right? Even if it's formed into a usable shape, but 2x4s, not screws, but 2x4s, lumber.
Nutshells is an interesting question, though, because you're allowed to eat the nuts on Shabbos, and then you put the shells.
It covers muktzah, right? So that's hopefully we'll get to that at some point. That's a practical application. Right? Raw food like potatoes, meat, pasta. These are things that no one can use in their current state. Insects, dead animals. They talk about some things like maybe raw fish. Certain kinds of raw fish are considered edible. I think that depends on the country and the culture that you're in. Broken things like broken glass, broken appliances that simply don't work. There is a dispensation because of danger of broken glasses in a place hurt, so to sweep it away.
Is there something about like if it's plugged in, an electric thing is plugged in or not plugged in? Is it different, like better if it is plugged in? Or is that?
It might be. So maybe we'll get to that.
Is that this topic?
An electric appliance that's plugged in may not be muktzah in the sense that if it's performing a function. So I think
Like an urn?
I want to double check this. No, well, cooking utensils I think are worse because cooking is really permitted on Shabbos. I think the example I read is something like you have a plug-in alarm clock or the clock, by your bedside, and you want to turn it so that you could see it. I mean, it's first of all, even if it's muktzah like a hammer's muktzah, if you need to see it. So I'm pretty sure that would be, or like a fan that you can just tilt it, not using any electric. If it's not plugged in, it has no use. Right, it has no use on Shabbos. But crockpot, but because it's a cooking implement, it really is. It's something forbidden for use on Shabbos. Now you take out the pop with the food in it, right?
But you can't
But,
like shift its position then?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Right.
The crock pot. Like it's on your countertop.
I believe it's well, we can look it up. There's actually there's a whole book on muktzah. This is just a short section. But
She's saying not because it's a cooking utensil.
Oh.
I think that there's a bigger problem with.
Would be more of a problem.
I think so. Well, let's check it out. I'll try to make a note to check it out for next week. I know that there's a discussion about electric appliances. Thank you. Being muktzah or not being muktzah.
Well, social clock is okay after that. Battery.
Kosher clock. Right, there you go. You see, kosher clock will be an example. Right? Yeah. Okay, well, let's see. The second kind of muktzah is valuable items. Or muktzah, valuable is, I guess, a good translation. So, and there's two kinds. I remember this is confusing when you learn it even in the original sources. To start getting a little confused, and apparently it's for legitimate reasons. There's really two kinds of valuable muktzah. One kind of valuable muktzah is it's muktzah because it's valuable. You have an expensive piece of wall art or expensive curios that are not meant to be handled at any time, are not meant to be touched, right? A rare stamp collection, perhaps, where you really keep the stuff under glass and you really don't touch it. Muktzah because you have no expectation that this would be used in any way in Shabbos. To look at it, it's not to touch. The other kind of valuable muktzah is it's a regular household item, but it's designated for a certain purpose. He doesn't give this example, but I would think like a cell phone might be an example. Like you don't use your phone; it's ubiquitous, but you only use it, especially the smartphone. You're not going to use it to crack nuts or as a paperweight, maybe as a paperweight. But the examples that are given, even in the old sources, a shchita knife or a mila knife. You use it; it's a regular knife, but it's used for shchita, and you would not use it for anything else. So it has to be carefully checked before you shech with it. And a mila knife is used for bris milah, not for anything else. Or a surgical instrument that doesn't have to be religious. Precision tools, that are used for a professional. For an artist, you have art supplies. A camera, an expensive camera. A computer flash drive. These are things that they're delicate and they have a certain value. And another thing that's kind of it's not intuitive to us, but I think it comes from Moshe Feinstein, blank writing paper. You use it to write on. You keep it clean and you use it. You don't use it as scrap or to mop up spills. It's only used for writing. Birth certificates, licenses, important documents. What? You're not touching right. So I think they say if you have a notebook with some writing in it, it's not muktzah because some pages have writing, at least writing that is permissible to read. Like if you take the notes of the class and you want to review them, I assume everyone does every Shabbat. So you can, but they recommend that you turn the pages with the writing, but you try not to handle the blank pages. It's a recommendation. I don't think it's something you have to be crazy over.
Well, I think you take a blank piece of paper and use it as a bookmark.
Yeah, but it's not an intuitive. I remember Rabbi Edelman said he once told Moshe to write something on a piece of paper and carefully tear it off and preserve the rest of the paper. So I don't know if at some point society becomes so disposable, but apparently they're still writing the same thing even today. So blank. Again, the point is it doesn't have to be valuable in terms of being very expensive, having a high price tag. The point is it has a value, and it's for that reason it's not typically used. The whole idea of muktzah, again, if there's one definition of the word muktzah, you think about what the opposite, right? Muktzah is a word with an opposite. The opposite of muktzah is muchan, right? Or hachana. Hachana means preparation. Muchan is prepared. Muktzah means set aside off limits, unprepared. Like so muktzah are things that are set aside, they're kind of off the table, off the radar. They're not they're not on my packing list for Shabbos. Mukhan are things that are prepared, designated, or earmarked for Shabbos. So things that are one-use items, and they're only, and the contrast, let's say, with the hammer is why is the hammer? A hammer is also muktzah on a certain level, but not as much as rocks, not as much as blank writing paper. Why? I mean, a hammer of all the things is the one that you're most likely to do something forbidden. That's true, but that's not what muktzah is about. It's not whether it's used for forbidden purposes. Muktzah is about, is this an item that I would ever consider to be on my Shabbos? So the answer is yes, because when I get coconut, it's often the most effective thing to use. Hammers are typically used mainly for driving in nails, but for other household chores, some of them not forbidden. Other examples, but maybe a pencil is typically used for writing, but occasionally I'll use it just to poke a hole in a package that it's hard to get, that makes that first tear in a plastic. If you needed to, it would be the same principle, I think, unless unless you say it's like blank paper, but I don't think so. I think a pencil is, again, it's a scissors, right? Scissors are typically used for things that you would not do on Shabbos, but occasionally I'll use it to open a bag of lettuce. And that's why it's not as muktzah as a rock, which typically has no use at all. And that's what the concept of muktzah really is.
If you only had a rock and not a hammer available to open out.
No, so a rock does not have any. The allowance to use a muktzah item, it only applies to things that aren't really a muktzah. It's interesting. I think Gemara pointed this out. When you do the Gemara on Shabbos, there's a fair amount of discussions on muktzah. There's this basic machlokas. I think it's going back to the Mishnah. Yesh muktzah or ein muktzah. Is there muktzah or is there no muktzah? And we hold ein muktzah. There's no muktzah. In other words, what we call muktzah today is the reduced form of muktzah. That's the more lenient opinion. There's a stricter opinion that believes in a wider array of muktzah. Muktzah is you learn is muktzah is like the periodic table. It's like a whole bunch of different elements and gradations of what muktzah actually is. Not one thing. And what they explain is that again, what we think of as the first thing that comes to your mind when you say something muktzah, you think of tools that are used for forbidden purposes. Those are not as muktzah because they are implements and they are household items, and household items typically have multiple uses, and the person in their mind has some sense that this could possibly be abused on Shabbos, as opposed to just raw materials. They're not formed at all. They're further away from your mind, and therefore they don't have any of these leniencies. The two leniencies, I guess once we're on the topic, the two leniencies that pertain to household items, even if they are hammers, even if they are screwdrivers, one is, as we said, when a permissible use arises, you can use it for that permissible purpose, and provided you don't have it equally accessible. If you have a hammer, but you also have a coconut opener, I don't know if there's such a thing, but a coconut cracker, you should use the coconut. I think I once heard many years ago, but you have these memories. Like I don't think I would have made this up. I think I once heard that if you would have to go into the other room to find a different item, then that's already enough of a basis to use the hammer. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that, but.
Because I keep my hammer in the dining room.
In some houses, that's the way it works. The nutcracker is where you don't want, where you're the last place you think to look, but the hammer is, on the dining room table.
But can you, let's say, set aside a rock in advance? Let's say you don't.
So
have
there's
a hammer,
discussion.
You
so
have
now,
a coconut protect. Can you set aside a rock?
So we'll see that that's part of the basic. That's kind of right, a basic premise of muktzah, to take something that is completely muktzah and make it into a tool. You need to do one of two things. Either you need to designate it permanently for that purpose, so it's got to be your official coconut opener, or if you want it to be more temporary, well, it's still a rock, but for this week I need it, then you have to do something physically to alter it and for that purpose. So you can't take a rock and say, well, this week it's a coconut cracker, and then after that it's a rock again. So we'll see. I'm not. It has to be it's not just that draw some stripes to make it. You have to do something that makes it more.
No, right, coconut cracker.
Well, so you have to. I think the idea. It's not just that you write it to designate it. You have to do something that kind of brings it more into the category of polish it a little, do something, put a handle on it. Something
So better to, like, if you want to hold the door open, it's better to use a chair or say than a rock.
Yeah, you can't use a rock to open it unless you want to use your foot to kick the rock, which again, according to some people is permitted, according to some people it's not. But, right, and that's the idea. As a matter of fact, it would be better to, if you open the door, and by opening the door, you kind of drag the rock into position, and it kind of falls, and that's better than kicking it with your foot, because everyone agrees that again, if you drag the rock by opening the door, you're using the second form of indirect movement, and that's permitted for a permissible purpose, which is it. So if you had kind of, I don't know, because you have to configure it so that if you thought about this before Shabbat, you just prepare a doorstop, but where the rock is in position, just to open it. Sometimes you have you just open the door enough, the rock will kind of fall in, and then it will block the door, and that would be. Anyways.
Yeah, but didn't Rabbi say that after designating things
Anything
before Shabbat?
you don't have to designate a hammer before Shabbos. A hammer is considered eligible for occasional uses of this nature. A hammer is a tool, and it's not an expensive tool. Right? It's that kind of tool. So what it means is that a hammer has a built-in predesignation on some level. Like there's a hammer is enough, it's close enough to the category of designated that the rabbi said when a permissible purpose arises, you can use the hammer for. It's not and carry it around for no reason. And if your goal was to preserve the hammer, that would be forbidden. Right? So if the hammer, if you say, oh well, someone leaves the hammer outside and it starts to rain, I got to bring the hammer inside because it might get rusty. You can't do that. But if you ask your neighbor for a coconut, say quickly, run to the neighbor, get a coconut. It's starting to rain. You come up with the coconut, and you pick up the hammer to crack the coconut, then that would be. Then if the question of dual purpose comes in, if you do it only for the purpose of saving the hammer, I don't know.
What would be an example of something that you would have to predesignate?
Pre-designating is usually, and it's not usually something that you do. It comes up actually on Yom Tov, I think, more than on Shabbos. So like on Yom Tov, you're allowed to shech that chicken. So they talk about wish chicken. And on Shabbos, you don't have that. You can't shech the chicken. If it's a live chicken, it's muktzah. And if it's a dead chicken, then it's food. On Yom Tov, where you can actually shech the chicken, so again, there's like, do you have to identify which chicken? Can you say, I'm designating all the chickens, so I'm going to take one of them. On Shabbos, it's not such a thing because most things either are usable or they're not. You can't really change, except this one example of when you take something and really move it from one category to the other. You move the rock into the category of a tool, that they discuss what it takes to do that, to render something a tool when it used to be not a tool.
So you said raw meat, so if you have like another cut of meat in your refrigerator, you can't move it?
Yeah, unless it's the kind of food that some foods are eaten raw. But if it's not, yeah, it's like a rock in that sense because it has zero use. It's not. No one says, oh, I need a slab of meat because a doorstop.
You're walking in the front wall and you can use meat to like, you know what I mean?
Right. I guess that's not considered enough. No, you're right. We do use that ice. Yeah, I mean, they say raw meat is. He actually said frozen meat. I never heard that used. I would hesitate to, make that into.
I didn't hear that for a black guy. I don't know.
No, the truth, no. I'll tell you what one obvious distinction is that. No, but remember, okay, spring beans are not muktzah because they're edible.
Oh,
You can eat them on Shabbos.
okay.
That's why you can eat them frozen. And the twins were little used to like to eat frozen vegetables. But even regular people who don't. No, but you can defrost them and eat them. They'll eat them in 20 minutes and they'll be fine. It's just the meat has to be cooked. But the thing is, the reason the argument is not a good argument, I mean, it's a good thought. It took me a minute there, but the frozen meat is not an implement. The idea of a hammer is a tool which is used primarily for work. But any tool has multiple uses. Most tools, except for the expensive tools that are one use tool. Not your digital camera, not your shkita knife. But most of your household tools, you go down to our boiler room, we have a hammer and a pliers, and we're always like, oh, maybe a pliers would be good for this, and maybe a hammer would be good for that. So any tool, unless it's a special tool, has multiple uses, and that's why you can use it. But meat is not a tool. It's raw meat, but it has no use. The fact that I could use it as an ice pack doesn't cut it. In other words, a hammer is already a tool, and to say that it's a tool which is able to be repurposed, that's not such a stretch. To take something which has no use at all, raw meat is like a rock, and the fact that you might sometimes put it on your head doesn't make it into a normal side. Just take this one. Better yet, watch where you're going.
Is the can open?
No. That's an interesting question, actually.
Well, I mean, if you're making a vessel, yes, it's can.
So we do open cans. So that's an interesting question. If you believe, I think many people avoid opening cans, at least unless you open them in a special destructive way on Shabbos. Does that mean that a can opener? The truth is that when we do open cans, not infrequently, for Shabbos you open a can of tuna. So you make a hole in the bottom. First of all, you can use the can opener to do both the bottom and the top. And even if you're using a knife or something else to make a hole in the bottom, but then once you make the hole in the bottom, you use the can opener on the top, and then you can. It really was not a pun intended. But you really can use the can opener on top of the can. So our can opener certainly gets used on Shabbos in its regular way. I assume that's true for pretty much everyone. Anyone who opens cans on Shabbos in this manner, the can opener is part of the process, and so for that reason, I assume a can opener is not looked at.
So the vessels did not open, so is that like, and I.
Well, the question is, did he have some specific rejection of the idea? Like the workaround that we rely on is that you open the bottom and the top, and it's destructive. So it's the same as opening a bag of lettuce or anything else, where you're not left with any usable item. I'm not aware of anyone that would oppose that practice. And that's the question. If Rabbi Baus did it because he had a stricter view, and generally,
soda and stuff used to all open before Shabbos.
right. So soda bottles that I know, there are people who there are different opinions, but with the plastic tops, the metal tops are a stricter issue, but the plastic caps. I think Rabbi Edelman does open them on Shabbos. I grew up that we don't open them on Shabbos. There certainly are opinions both ways. But the cans, there are people who allow you to open cans straight up, but many, if not most people, say not to open a can straight. But I'm not aware of any real issue with the destructive approach where you open both. Yeah, maybe you could always be matir neder. In general, when you do something, you take on a practice and you want to undo it, you're supposed to be matir neder. The truth is that it says. That's really only if you took on a practice, something which you thought was halachically forbidden, and you found out that there really wasn't any reason for it, or I made a mistake. You don't need to be matir neder because it wasn't. You never committed to doing anything extra. You just were following what you thought was the law, and then you found out the law was something else. You didn't realize the product has a hefsher, so you never ate it, and you find out that it's kosher. You don't have to be matir neder. But that's similar. If you did something, you said some. And let's say you grew up in a Hasidic community and everyone wears a gartel, and you just thought that's what you have to wear, and then you find out that it's a Hasidic custom, and I'm not Hasidic. So I think technically, maybe I don't know what people would advise you in practice to take out, but you don't need to be matir neder because I never intended to take. I just thought that was part of the religion, like tefillin and talis. I don't know, If you don't realize something is a custom, you just think that, or I thought it was just what people wear. It's part of the fashion, so it doesn't require to have there. Okay.
I feel bad to do it after I know what Rabbi Baus but.
Yeah, look, there may be a reason we can look it up. I mean, look, in general, there is an idea. And the Rishim said it. I remember one example he gave, the laws of the Nazir. So it's a famous question. A person takes on a vow for 30 days they're not going to drink wine, or cut their hair, or go to a cemetery. And it's a holy thing. It's a voluntary thing. It's a holy thing. And the Torah says at the conclusion of the period of time, however long it is, the person has to bring various sacrifices and then re-enter the regular mode of living. And one of the sacrifices is a chata, a sin offering. So everyone wants to understand why is he making a sin offering. He didn't do a sin. On the contrary, he did something extra specially good. So one approach that the rabbis say is that the sin is for depriving oneself. Because in principle, Hashem, depriving ourselves is not part of our religion, and Hashem gives us things to enjoy and take care of ourselves. Sometimes, again, it's hard to understand. Torah says it's a good thing, but it's not a good thing. At the very least, we can say that a person should be aware there's a dichotomy. It's maybe a necessary evil, but we don't celebrate, suffering or depriving oneself. Sometimes it's necessary, like any kind of medicine, right? Medicine is necessary, but you take as little of it as you can get. You try to avoid it. It's the same thing. It's not an aspiration. I can't wait to take medicine. So same thing in Nazir. It might be necessary at times, but it's not what the Torah says is the ideal to strive for. But another shot, this is I think from Rabbi Bachaya, he says that the person who is a Nazir is now going to be re-entering normal life. And it feels like they're downgrading. So the sin offering is meant to send a message that, that's not really who I am. I'm really, and I'm set, it was the right thing for me in the last month to live on a higher plane of abstinence. Now the requirements of life demand that I function in a more regular way, but it's supposed to bring the sin offering is supposed to help the person hold on to that sense that I'm not backtracking or undoing the spiritual accomplishment. And the idea is we should explain. Look, here you have a person who's a regular person and doing everything. There's no reason to assume that the person was in any way falling short of their responsibilities, and yet there comes a time where they feel a need or a drive to elevate themselves and live on a higher plane, which is a wonderful thing. And they're not required to do it at all. And when they do take on this commitment, they're not required to do it for any longer than they deem necessary. So that the person decides, I'll do it for 30 days, or I'll do it for 5 years, whatever it is. And when they're done. They go back. They're not any worse off than they were before. And yet, despite all of that, internally, when the person, like the girls, when they come back from seminary, they're just like, you feel like you're going back down. I mean, there's nothing wrong with you before, and then you just did something extra to elevate and inspire, which you can't do all the time. Now you're going back to where you were before. Why is there anything bad about that? But nevertheless, as human beings, it feels like a downgrade. Right? We go to Yom Kippur and we have the highlight of the Eilah, and then we go back. Hopefully, I'm as good as I was in Erev Yom Kippur, and hopefully better. And yet, I feel like okay, So you have to counteract that. That's a feeling. It's not logical, but that's the human The contrast, I was on a high, now I'm going down. If you're going down, it feels like a drop. And the sin offering is meant to psychologically serve as a reinforcement against that. So, that I think the Rishiva would say, for example, that I think in practical ways, if a person had certain customs, he was a believer. The Rishiva believed that when you're in the yeshiva, you should follow yeshiva customs, which are basically Ashkenazic, Lithuanian, typical. The idea of minhag in general is really minhag hamakom. Like the custom that we follow, talk about, what my grandfather did, that's not really what it's based on. The concept of halacha, the custom, is the minhag hamakom. It goes back to the Mishnah talks about it. There are some places where they didn't work on Erev Pesach in the morning, and some places where they did work until midday. You can't do work after midday on Erev Pesach, but there were different customs about doing work the first half of the day. Some places did, some places didn't. Like Gemara talks about having a city where some people follow Beis Hillel, some people follow Beis Shammai. Minhag is really place-based, but in today's world, no place. What kind of minhag did New York have? And everyone was uprooted and dislocated and moved to different places. So, for lack of any better option, we go back to what my ancestors did. If we have ancestors, or if we know what they did, often we don't. Or the ancestors come from different places, or whatever it might be, or it's unknown, or